So I should tell everyone about it. I'll let Sarah tell us all about it.
So as Greg said, I'm Sarah. I did a Bachelor of Design with Honours at the College of Fine Arts, and for a major project I went to combine our two majors, which was object design and graphic design. And the brief was that there was no brief apart from the fact that it had to improve life in some way or have an impact on someone or something. So I looked at a few different projects before I decided that I wanted to look at bottled, more plastic water bottles. I started at looking at New Zealand companies because I was from New Zealand, and I have always had a strong connection with the way that companies work within New Zealand. There's a bit of a green consumer within a lot of people in New Zealand, I believe, because there's a feeling of wanting to move forward and be progressive even though we're small, and it's sort of a nice size to be able to experiment on. So I decided that I would look at H2GO, and initially I just spoke to them about using their brand for my project, so it had a little bit of weight, and I had a design parameter to work within, and a few different constraints because another part of the project was having a client, and I think working with H2GO was really good because it allowed me to look at a product that was already in existence, and then look at how I wanted to move in and modify it or redesign it. So I went and spoke with their product manager called Alice in Auckland, and he gave me not only permission to use their brand, but to come back and present to them my findings. So over the project, I presented twice to them in Australia. Alice flies over to their office in Australia. So H2GO is part of Fruitball, which is they do vegan, My Zone, and a few other they are packaged drinks. And in those presentations, they were just completely supportive about my role within the project, and no putting so few limitations on me apart from certain things like being 700 mils, a few logos that had to be on there. They wanted a twist top. They had a few ideas about how they wanted the bottle to reflect water more and reflect their consumer more. So, but apart from that, they basically gave me free rein to look at the project however I wanted. And so after that, I looked at a few different things. I looked at bottles that were made out of plastic that was flexible, so that if they went into waste, they were smaller than a PET bottle. And then I started researching plastic pollution and trying to get my head around the quantities of plastic that are out there, and apparently it's a small island of plastic bags off Japan, and so getting that grasp of what I was looking at and what I was working with. So I knew that I couldn't, at this point in the project, change the consumer. I understand the concept of bottled water. It's convenient, it's everywhere you can possibly buy it, it's perfectly proportioned and packaged, and Mount Franklin is a brand in itself, and people drink Mount Franklin because they want that to speak about themselves. So I knew that my project wasn't going to be an anti-water campaign or something like that, but I wanted to look at a product that was so damaging to the environment and look at finding a solution to not get rid of it but to improve it. So think of it sort of as transitional sustainability, where no one's going to go cold turkey right now, I don't believe, but we can raise awareness and create connection and get people thinking and talking about these bad products and how we can improve them. So I don't know if anyone's heard of a product called Goody, but I researched it, and it's in a few bottles at the moment, and it's a chemical treatment that you treat PET with, and it makes it be able to be compostable. So it's still using PET plastic, but the process of when they're creating the plastic makes it so that it can be commercially composted. And initially I thought, well, that's a great idea because it can use a technology that's already available, and and like not to forget that so much has been invested in this technology and so, so many resources to create these products. So I didn't want to lose that completely. And so I thought about Goody, and then looking further into PET and just realising that it's just a horrible product, and the amount of oil is more than the water. Like the amount of oil it takes to create the plastic bottle is more than the water that's in it. So it didn't make any sort of sense in my mind. And then I started researching polylactic acid, and Alistair actually got me onto it, looking into it, and it's plant-based. So plastics are always going to be controversial, I think, but I do believe that polylactic acid is a step in the right direction. It's expensive to implement, and Australia doesn't have the resources just yet to be able to recycle it. But once that happens, polylactic acid is infinitely recyclable. So PET, because of its high oil content, you have to downcycle because of the regulations in Australia. So if it starts as offered food packaging and it's recycled, it then can only be reproduced in a certain way that it no longer is the high quality plastic that it needs for food. So eventually it becomes useless. But polylactic acid can, if it's properly taken care of and then properly recycled, which is still using the infrared technology that normal bottles are sorted with, it can then be reproduced into virgin resin. So technically, in like a perfect world, you could create a certain number of bottles and they would just replace themselves, so it would be replenishing. And so looking at that as a best case scenario. And so that technology is about 5 years away in Australia. There's a few in America that can recycle this, but it's a little way away. But if they're in circulation, then that will put a push on and a drive for the government to implement those technologies. So, and then they'll already be there, so it'll just be a matter of waiting, really. And so best case scenario is that they get recycled and keep redeveloping themselves. Worst case scenario is that the user doesn't look after it and it goes to waste, and they then biodegrade. So I think it's about 80 days it takes them to get to 10% of their original size. So it means that in the very, very worst case scenario, the bottle still looks after itself. And so that concept of best case and worst case scenario then made me think about the physical design and how I could create what I decided to call product love within a product. So I think that you can do that in 6 ways, which is communication, interaction, awareness, sense, thought, and then packaged and design. So the idea, because I had this quite strong concept of what I wanted to do, the bottle came together physically quite quickly. The interaction is the idea of taking something that's a part of a bigger project or a bigger thing. So you're not only just taking your bottle, but you're peeling it away from a line of bottles. So if you look after your bottle, hopefully someone else will look after their bottle, and it's a bit of hopefully a chain reaction. You read all the branding through the water, so it's a real sense of what you're purchasing. It's not just an outside brand, it's you're buying water, you're reading it through the water, it changes how you read the labelling. It's just creating that little bit of thought that isn't surrounded with bottled water. I mean, if you look at studies on bottled water, consumer feeling towards bottled water is really negative. They think it's overpriced, unnecessary, and but still everyone consumes it. So it's completely subconscious. So we want to bring that consuming into the conscious, and I think that design can help with that. And then if it looks good, which I hope it does, then hopefully the consumer will want to look after it, keep it, or at least then dispose of it properly. And even if it looks nice, you're more likely to put it in your handbag and take it home and then recycle it rather than just tossing it on the street or whatever happens. And so with H2GO, my clause was that if they wanted to use my design, they had to use polylactic acid. So it was sort of like, hopefully they like my bottle, and if they like it enough, they can use the technology and use polylactic acid. And so I needed to design the best design I could to beat out all the other people who would design a PET bottle, which they had the technology to put in straight away, not actually think of a way forward as a new investment. So the fact that they're even considering it is really fantastic. But also I talked to H2GO about this sort of holistic approach as a company and how important it was not to just produce a green bottle, but to actually think of their practice as a whole and look at a holistic approach to sustainability. So the idea there is that if H2GO can present a nice product which is truly more environmentally friendly than a PET bottle, then that will put pressure on other water bottle companies, other packaging companies, other people who are producing plastic, and say, well, if this company can do it successfully, then why not us? And I do believe that there are many consumers who will choose a green product over a not so green product. It's just that as long as it's not hugely more expensive, I don't think that people want to be wasteful. It's just convenient. So the idea is that if somebody can do it successfully, then why not other companies? And that can be this trickle effect of medical packaging and food packaging, which are just such huge contributors to plastic pollution. And so when I was back in New Zealand a few weeks ago, speaking with H2GO, and it's all still moving forward, which is really good. It's a very long process, but they're still so supportive and always really interested in hearing the next step and where it's going. And we've talked about there's actually another brand, New Zealand Natural, who's looking at rebranding, and I think it might be a better fit for them. So I'm just looking at the branding for New Zealand Natural now. And they're really exciting. They talk about like restaurant versions, like a larger bottle and things like that. So it's all, it's been a really great experience, and they just their support has been awesome. So the idea is that in this state of transition and resistance, I guess, is that if we can make bad products a little bit better, then for now that's okay. And I think that we need the people to be looking at the big picture. But if we can just push the small stones, then everything else will start moving, and that's sort of where I want to fit in. Yes. Any questions?
Well, questions and comments. I think the change process is definitely happening, and it's probably frustrating to see how slow it's going in so many areas, but I don't think we can actually reverse back to where we've been very easily. A favourite saying is that I heard is that we often underestimate, we overestimate what we can do in the short term, but underestimate what we can do in the long term. So this is just one of many projects, a bit like SRD Change, but just make sure it's happening and do it the best that we can, and the change is happening. It may not be at the rate that we'd like to see, but it's great that it's going. It's great that your project's happening things. So you said you've got, you're potentially working on a restaurant size, so a larger one.
larger, still in pilot, like I said, but Alistair's, he's just really funny. He talks about larger one with maybe frosted PLA, which they're looking at now, and like inversing the branding, and so it sounds really good. But I think that's a wee way away. But the idea of a bigger bottle, which is obviously convenient for home or being looked after, so it gives that commodity product a bit more longevity. And so I think it's important to if you can create the love in the product, and then people want to look after it.
And part of it's also changing habits. And habits are things that have come about over decades, if not generations. So we've got to just promote what we think is good and why it's good. And I think that people will actually take it up, so the change is happening. and their habits should be actually a result of it. So.
Yeah, it's quite scary to think that somebody could go to a convenience store, buy a bottle of water, drink it probably in a few minutes, and discard it only a few minutes later, and it's being bottled at the source, transported to the packaging company, being distributed, and it's all over. It costs $2, and it's all over in a matter of minutes. It's just quite. And transportation is so inefficient because water is obviously so heavy that the trucks are driving around not even a third full. So if they got together with like, I don't know, hello company, and you know, it's so, yeah, it's quite mind-boggling and sad.
What's any other questions? Because I can keep asking questions.
Why is water so expensive in Australia, like bottled water? Is that a government thing?
I think it's got to do with anything, competition and how many water bottle companies there are, and they must have a way of setting the price. But Australia has one of the best drinking waters in the world, and it's still 3 times the price of petrol. So
is that like overseas bottled water is so cheap?
Yeah.
Like you're talking like 15 cents for a litre or something.
Yeah, I don't know why.
We don't have any restriction.
Yeah, I thought that could have been a government thing to be like
To try and
reducing the
discourage
bottle,
it. Yeah. Well, I mean, places that there's that town in like north of New South Wales that banned bottled water from all of their.
Southern Highlands, Bundaberg.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Bundy on tap is the
Yeah.
promotion there. And one of our SRD people has been involved in that
Yeah.
program
Oh,
too.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I looked at there's a company, and the first idea I had was just to promote tap water as far as drinking water. And there's a company in New York called Tapped, and you buy the bottle empty, and they have registered taps all around New York, and you can just fill your water up, and it's just their normal drinking water.
yeah, they've got that in Hong Kong, so
Yeah.
like you get a special bottle and then you use it.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense, but I mean, on one hand, I can completely understand, the appeal, but so many other ways. When you consciously think about it, it's absurd.
I'm consciously thinking about anything.
Yeah.
We've had numerous discussions that there's just so many disconnects and so many blackouts and so many we don't want to know about it because
It's
it's
too
very
easy to
difficult.
switch off.
What are some of the sorts of composting rates and processes for it?
Industrial composting. So I did a Bachelor of Design, so I don't know the technical stuff of the industrial designers and things like that. But as far as I'm aware, industrial composting is very quick because of the temperatures that they're able to reach. But in normal waste is 80 days. So in normal landfill. 80. So it's still, it's a long time, but it's better than years. Exactly. So yeah,
I had
and I know that they are.
I had a question. Someone came in and asked about these bottles. What about storing the water? Do they break down?
Yes,
You know what I mean?
so
Like-
we've got a shelf life of about, this is PET. Obviously they couldn't make me the samples, which would have been lovely. But they've got a 5% absorption rate, so the plastic absorbs over 2 years. So you have to overfill them with water. That's not exactly a problem. And shelf life of about 2 years. So
Okay.
it would probably, in the places where it's thin, so it's designed so that there's a bit of it's malleable at the front, so places like that or on the seams maybe would start to wear after 2 years. So that is a downside of but I don't think with bottled water it's a huge restriction. If it was something like you could never package wine in PLA because of aging effects and things like that. But I think with bottled water it would be okay.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, they absorb 5% of whatever's in them.
And you could just recycle them anyway, couldn't you?
Yeah.
One of my favourite little examples of similar sorts of product is the golf tee. They used to just make them out of petrochemical plastics or timber. But of course something that's already in an environment where it will happily decompose, that's made out of PLA or at least a plant starch.
Yeah.
And so if they are if they are destroyed or left in the golf course, it just happily goes back into the system.
Yeah.
What a nice notion.
A couple of girls in New Zealand just designed a biro that has a seed in the end of it, so when it runs out, it's made out of a cornstarch and just pop it in the ground and then
That's another little
400 years later there'll be a huge young tree here. So, yeah.
That's a little cornstarch can too. I'm not sure about the tip of my
Yeah.
hand, but I know it's actually good food because I've got one at home that a little mouse is actually eating the end of it. Any other questions? Fabulous.
Thanks, sir.